Once again, evil has shown its stupid face, and it's up to you to put it back in its place. We're taking a quick peek at Cursed Castilla. Cursed Castilla, also known as Maldita Castilla DX, is a hardcore arcade platform game by Locomolito. Locomolito is a Spanish game developer who's been releasing games on the internet since around 2008. Their projects include everything from games like Wolfenstein 3D, Space Invaders, and Galaga, as well as early Spectrum titles. Cursed Castilla itself is a remake of Maldita Castilla, a game released for free by Locomolito in 2012. Maldita Castilla, meaning cursed or damned castle in Spanish, had fewer levels and is missing some of the things in the current version available on Steam. The game was designed to feel like an arcade game from the mid-1980s. Well, one game in particular. In 1985, Capcom released Ghosts and Goblins onto the arcade world and spawned a series of difficult medieval fantasy platform games, as well as a spin-off or two. Ghosts and Goblins and its sequel Ghouls and Ghosts were created to be quarter eaters at the arcade. One of the main difficulties of the series is just being able to control the game. Arthur, the main character, could not change his direction in the air after he jumped. The series eventually allowed players to change direction in the air by executing a double jump, but once you press the jump button, your fate was sealed. This particular mechanic is very important to keep in mind, as it's one of the things Cursed Castilla borrows from Capcom. Ramiro only has one jump, similar to Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins. While you can't change direction in the air, the game itself seems to be less focused on complex platforming. Ramiro himself has 3 different jumps he can do: upwards, left, and to the right. Jumping up gives Ramiro a very small amount of air movement from side to side, but it's really not all that much and not all that helpful. This is problematic, as Ramiro will sometimes use his upward jump instead of the left or right one, causing him to undershoot his landing and probably die. I had this problem a lot in this particular section where you had to jump across the backs of moving turtles. It took me way longer than I'd like to admit to get past this part of the game. While there isn't a ton of pixel-perfect platforming, it can sometimes be difficult to tell what part of a platform is the actual platform. When it comes to these turtles, the edges of their shells don't count as part of the platform, so if you happen to land on it, you'll still fall your death. It can be very frustrating, but thankfully Castilla has a plethora of checkpoints. Being a game designed around arcades, Cursed Castilla does use a live system, even though it's basically pointless. When you run out of lives, you'll go to the continue screen, but continues are unlimited since there's no way to put quarters into your computer. At least not that I know of. Using a continue will respawn Ramiro at the last checkpoint with all 3 of his lives back. The only penalty is having your score reset to 0. If you don't care about score, then there's basically no penalty at all. Well, there is this one thing where after using 4 continues, the game states that you can continue at the risk of losing your soul, but I'm not entirely sure what it means by that. It could be something game-specific, or it could mean falling into the depths of madness as you attempt to finish this game. Thankfully, Ramiro is a bit tougher than Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, as he has 3 hit points opposed to 2. He also doesn't go running around in his underwear. The game does have knockback after Ramiro gets hit, but it's not too bad, and you get some invincibility frames to help you get back in the action. They don't work on spikes nor insta-kill death pits. Those will still kill you regardless of the kind of frames you have. Along with platforming, Cursed Castilla has a heavy emphasis on combat. Again, it's similar to the Ghosts and Goblins series, as Ramiro throws an infinite number of whatever weapon he has equipped, be it a sword, axe, daggers, or whatever this thing is. Each weapon is unique, but there's a bit of a catch to them. You can only have a few instances of each weapon on the screen at a time. What this means for a weapon like the sword is that you can only have 2 thrown swords on the screen at a time. You can't throw a third one until one of the previous projectiles leaves the screen. Weapons move rather quickly, so it's not always an issue, but there are 2 in particular that are made a bit more difficult to use due to this. The dagger fires 3 knives in different directions, but you can only have 1 instance of this attack on the screen at a time, while holy fire is basically useless since it's difficult to aim and takes forever to hit anything. The combat almost feels like it was taken directly from Ghouls and Ghosts, the second game on the Ghosts and Goblins series. Unlike pretty much every other game in that series, that game allows you to attack both above and below you as well as to the left and right. It's great for dealing with flying enemies and makes vertical levels actually possible. I hate to constantly be comparing this game to its inspiration, but it's difficult not to because it is so similar. That being said, Cursed Castilla feels like a modern take on the Ghosts and Goblins series instead of just a clone, mainly an updated version to Super Ghouls and Ghosts. It gets rid of a lot of the unfair ideas those games used due to their roots in the arcade. I've never been able to beat a game in the Ghosts and Goblins series, but I was able to finish Cursed Castilla, and it only took me 77 continues! Most of them used at this dang turtle section. The difficulty curve in Cursed Castilla is honestly the worst part about it. The bosses and level design for level 1 and level 2 I found to be pretty manageable. Each level has 2 bosses, a mid-boss and a final boss. Level 1's mid-boss is a complete joke, and an enemy that will show up later, while the final boss provides some decent challenge. From there forward, however, things quickly get dicey. It was towards the end of level 3 that the game started going from manageable to frustrating, as the level design began to change to favor the trial and error approach to gameplay, and the bosses became just flipping ridiculous. The mid-boss isn't too bad, but the final boss for level 3, oh, the final boss for level 3. Crazy Coyote is probably the most annoying boss in the entire game. I had more trouble with this guy than I did the final boss before I finished the game. He's completely immune to your attacks except in short bursts at specific points in the fight, and he's got a lot of randomization to him. He's also got 12 hearts. I do find it kind of funny that the fight takes place in a burning library, and one of the attacks is him reading a book at you. It's pretty obvious that the boss is loosely based on Don Quixote, who himself was obsessed with medieval literature. Cursed Castilla is heavily inspired by a similar kind of literature. The developers have stated that some of the main inspirations for the game and its story were Spanish myths about the Kingdom of Castilla, as well as the book Amadis de Gaula. From what I know, the game isn't an adaptation of any one story, but has its own. A demon is corrupting the tears of a broken-hearted young witch, and using them to open a gateway to hell and release a dark army upon the world. It's very original. There are 7 chapters in the base game, with the possibility of an 8th chapter if you happen to get all of the collectibles as you go. You've also got 3 bonus rounds to help you get more points. The game doesn't have any kind of online leaderboards that I'm aware of, and points reset anyway after you use a continue, so I didn't really care about them all that much. Still, there are a ton of ways to earn points if you happen to be somebody who's focused on doing that. Killing enemies is the easiest way to do it, but there's also treasure to grab from a plethora of sources. Enemies will sometimes drop it when they die, but it can also be randomly spawned from chests and found hidden throughout levels. Apparently, some people had the wherewithal to stash their possessions before all hell literally broke loose. Attacking specific areas will reveal the hidden goods, and Ramiro has absolutely no issues with stealing it. Chests can contain other things besides treasure, although treasure is the most common. It's the only place you'll find weapon pickups, equipment, and extra lives. Equipment will give Ramiro different abilities, such as a shield that'll block a hit or a pair of winged boots that will give him a second jump. You can even find blue fairies that'll give you some backup firepower as long as you have them equipped, but you can only carry one piece of equipment at a time. Keys use the equipment slot as well, and while they're rare, they are very, very important. There's at least one level that requires you to find the key in order to be able to finish it, but keys are generally used to unlock the doors for the collectibles that will unlock the 8th chapter. I was only able to find one key and door combination throughout my playthrough of the game. I would find both keys and locked doors, sure, but there was only once I was able to find them both in the same level. Equipment like keys doesn't transfer between levels nor lives. Thankfully, it seems that keys are always in the same location, unlike other equipment. So as long as you don't get a checkpoint after the area with the key, you could recollect it after you die. If you do get a checkpoint and then die, then you have to restart the game, as there doesn't seem to be any kind of level select screen. Cursed Castilla claims to have 4 different endings, and since I only got 1 out of the 5 or so gems you need to be able to unlock the 8th level, I assume I got the worst one. It took me about 3 hours according to Steam to get through the game the first time I played it, and I admit I'm not fantastic at platformer games. Even though I got the worst ending, it's still an ending, which is better than nothing. Along with the main game, you also get a bestiary to give you some background on the mythical monsters you'll be facing. It doesn't go super in-depth, but it's nice to see that the devs put some thought behind their characters. Overall, I did enjoy my time with Cursed Castilla, even if I found it utterly frustrating at times. I'll never be a master at it, but I do feel like I'll replay it at some point. It really feels like a modern take on an arcade game and does a great job keeping the gameplay and difficulty people love from those games while updating it to feel less unfair and impossible. With some good, if not frustrating at times level design, and interesting, if not frustrating at times boss fights, I would recommend the game to anybody looking for a good challenge. The music is alright as well, with some dark and foreboding tunes, but I don't feel like it's as bombastic as I would like it to be. I feel the game is worth its $12 US asking price, especially if you're someone who revels in those difficult but fair platformers. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think about the game or this video in the comments section. I've been Mega Pie Man, and I'll talk to you guys later. Hey, do you want to see more quick peeks? Click one of the links on the video right now. On the left, I covered Halloween Forever, a retro platformer filled with the spirit of Halloween. And on the right, I covered Eisenhorn Xenos, a third-person action game set in the Warhammer 40k universe.